readers, I'm Amy, and today I want to do a review of Hungry Hearts. This is going to be in bits and pieces, ideally. We'll see how the editing turns out, but I'm hoping to do a really short review for each of the short stories in here. Hungry Hearts is a series of short stories talking about food, and there's different topics that they go over, like grief, family, stuff like that. There is this really cute map of Hungry Hearts Row where there's all these cafes and like apartments and townhouses and stuff, and I think it's a super cute map. I tried to keep track of where things were with the first story. I might, I don't know, put in like little tabs or something to see where people live. But our first story is Rain by Sangu Mandanna, and it's one that's talking about grief. So you have this girl and her father are visiting an aunt, trying to get over the death of the girl's mom, the man's wife. And the girl, in an attempt to kind of reconnect with her mother, is trying to recreate a recipe that she used to make all the time. It was like the only thing that she cooked, but her family really loved it, and she's trying to learn how to recreate it, and her dad gets in on it. And it was really sweet. I can see myself doing this someday. In particular, my mom has this hot chocolate recipe because she makes her own hot cocoa. And I know I have that recipe. I probably have a couple of different writings of that recipe because my mom keeps giving it to me and I keep losing track of it. And I need to actually keep track of it. I think last Christmas or the Christmas before, she gave me a bunch of recipe cards with her recipes that I keep asking her for and keep losing the recipes for. So it was really cute and sweet. I hope that I like the rest of the stories in here as much as I liked the first one. Hey everybody, so today you're getting me in my business attire because I just got back from work. I have read 3 more stories. My initial idea for this vlog was to review each story like individually and then do a clip of me making food of some type, but that just seemed really long and involved, especially with how much I'm working these days. So just a quick overview of the next 3 chapters that I've read. We have Kings and Queens by Elsie Chapman. She's also one of the main editors for the book. Kings and Queens was about rival gangs and an incident that happened between them. And these are Chinese gangs. And we're from the perspective of a younger girl in the family. She works at Emperor's Way, which is like one of the best Chinese food places on Hungry Hearts Row. So that was kind of neat to see her perspective, and it's a real discussion of like what family means and everything, especially whenever you have like this overarching gang affiliation and how do you deal with that, but also like being part of a family. So it was a really interesting story. Then we had, I believe it's pronounced The Grand Ishq. It's ISHQ. The Grand Ishq Adventure by Sandhya Menon. I believe this was an Indian story, like Indian. And this one, I just want to read you the first paragraph so you kind of see what you're dealing with. It says, "Love is both a recurring theme in my life and the greatest pain in my butt." So right off, we know it's going to be a love story. My name, Neha, means love. I'm also the love advice columnist, aka Dr. Ishq, for the library's teen blog here in Roebury. My pen name, if you haven't already guessed, means love in Urdu, and the great love of my life, not that he knows it, Prem, his name means love too. So I thought that was just kind of like a fun beginning, like, oh, all of these different things mean love, and that's gonna kind of set us up for our story. It wasn't too cheesy though, which I liked. This one is a story where you have someone write in to say, hey, like there's this person that I have a crush on and I don't know how to tell them, but I also don't want to lose time. And so what she does as the love advice columnist is that she writes an answer saying that you should practice being brave and that she's going to do it too with along with the person who wrote the letter. So what she does is she eats at a different restaurant, like with a different cuisine that she has never tried, for 4 days in a row. And then on that 4th day, the person who wrote the note is supposed to tell the person that they wrote it about that they loved them. And I thought that was an interesting way to go about it. Like, if you want to be brave enough to tell someone that you have a crush on them, practice being brave by doing something else. And in this case, it was trying foods that you hadn't tried before. Then we have Sugar and Spite by Rin Chupeco. I believe this was a Filipino story, if I was understanding it correctly. And it starts off with 15 is an appropriate age to test for seasoning. And I remember when I started this story, I had to reread that line a couple of times because I'm like, what does that mean? And it goes on. So we'd seen this shop before in this series of short stories. I love that they're all different writers, but they're all writing with the same place and like the same characters popping up. But there's this little soup shop that's thought of as magical. So like if you are looking for love or bravery or what have you, they serve you certain things. And this is, rather than featuring that shop, this one is about that shop. So it's about the soup shop, and you have this 15-year-old who's getting tested for seasoning. So they take a little bit of blood from her finger and put it in the soup, and then her grandmother tastes it to see what she tastes like. And I think they ended up saying that she tasted like saffron. And so that means that she's got like a lot of magic in her or something. So they're having her practice making their soups, and she eventually gets to make her own soup. And I really loved that story. I loved the magic of it. The other ones didn't have as much of a magic. There's like a recurring character who seems to have some magic to her, but the magic just kind of dips in and out. And I'm actually really enjoying it so far. I think Sugar and Spice has been my favorite story because it does have that little bit of witchiness to it. And you just get a really good sense of the personalities. So far with these 4 stories, I'm going to say Rin Chupeco is my favorite author at this time. But I will check in with you after a couple more stories, and we'll see if I've changed my mind on that. Now, on to the next 3 chapters of Hungry Hearts. We have Moments to Return by Addie Allsaid. This was about a guy from Montenegro who is terrified of death, like goes into regular panic attacks just thinking about the end of his life, and is after some sort of magical food to make him feel better. So he visits Hungry Heart Row, where this all takes place, and ends up going to this like soup and dumplings place. And I really liked that one. You can kind of see his attitude changing, like he's still terrified of death, but you see his focus on it change. So that was a great way to illustrate like maybe how the magic food worked. Then we have The Slender One by Carolyn Tung Richmond. I believe this was a Chinese story, because it sounded like it was a Chinese family. And the Slender One is this specific ghost that is really upset about something. So our main character in this chapter can see ghosts and can kind of communicate with them. And you have the Hungry Ghost Festival coming up where you're supposed to feed the ancestors. It kind of sounds like a Day of the Dead-esque celebration. And he just recently joined a new school, and people don't know about him working at that restaurant yet. No one knows that he can see ghosts and talk to ghosts, so he's trying to figure that out. And of course, he's a teenager, so he's very much like, it's embarrassing, I don't want anyone to know. When you're an adult, you don't really care that much. Gimme Some Sugar by J. Coles. This one was a black family, and it was about soul food. So this kid's mom is very sick and she can't afford her life-saving operation, so he joins a cooking competition because the prize money could help him help his mom feel better. And this was a really great one to make me stop and think about like the different restaurants that have been introduced. So in this one, the character's grandmother, who owns Butter, which is a soul food place, and I loved hearing about Butter and how much they use butter, because my arteries will clog and kill me with how much butter I eat. But anyways, his grandma had won most of the previous competitions of the last like couple of decades. She was a big winner of them in general. But I like how each of the stories kind of has a different restaurant focus and doesn't really make any of them better than any other. It doesn't say like, well, the Chinese food is better than the Korean food, which is better than the Indian food, which isn't like, it doesn't line things up like that. It's each chapter is celebrating a different kind of food for what it is, and I love that. So I've got a little less than half of this book to go through. The next story is by Rebecca Roanhorse, who I know has written some fantasy novels, so I'm assuming that her story is going to be one of those magical ones. Hey everybody. So 2 more stories to talk about. I've been going through like a slower period with this book, so I had to look over the chapters really quick to remember what I read. First one is The Missing Ingredient by Rebecca Roanhorse. This is about an indigenous restaurant that is failing. It felt a little bit different from the rest of the stories in that it got like really, really dark. But I did enjoy it. I haven't read any of Rebecca Roanhorse's books. I'm not sure that her writing style is really for me. She feels a little more young adult. But very good story. Went very dark very quickly. And then we have Hearts a la carte by Karuna Riazi. I want to say it was an Indian restaurant. Not entirely sure because I didn't really talk about it, but it's a halal food cart. And this one ended up being like a superhero story, which really just has not felt like it fit in the collection at all. I didn't feel like I really knew the characters that well, but I did like kind of the lesson of the story, because this girl really likes this guy, and then he does something to upset her, and it's like, okay, we can start working on our friendship, but I'm gonna put any relationship ideas I have to the side so we can work on this friendship first. So I really liked that kind of message. Yeah, but that's what I've read so far, so I'm gonna get back to it. I don't know how many more updates I'm gonna have. I've got a couple stories left, but I'm close enough to the end. And I guess I have like a quarter of the book left, but for once, I'm not going anywhere or doing anything today, so I might just finish the book and then talk about the rest of the stories. See you in the next clip. So I did in fact finish the book. We have Bloom by Phoebe North is about a Jewish family that has a deli, and our main character is considering her future. Does she want to go to college? Does she not want to go to college? And the deli is owned by her grandfather. It's just a lot of considering, like, what am I going to do with the future? Sorry, my camera keeps moving. When I'm not looking, apparently I go up. Then we have A Bountiful Film. This one I really enjoyed. It was just about this character who is trying to get ready to enter into a film competition and considering different things to film. I don't remember what kind of food they had. I don't know if it was really mentioned. It was kind of a mix of things. One of the first things that she films is I think it's her grandmother's Thursday club, where she gets together with a bunch of her friends and they each have like a different kind of food that they bring. And it's the main character recently moved to Hungry Hearts Row and is like not super happy about it and getting used to the place and kind of trying to learn how to make the best of what she's got. She ends up meeting up with her competitor at one point and just really loved kind of seeing this character develop. Then we have Side Work. Did I even say who the other one was by? A Bountiful Film was by S.K. Ollie. Side Work by Sarah Farzan was a character who had been in a car crash a couple months ago after drinking at a party, and she's working really hard for her grandpa at this restaurant. This one was really... It had a couple of different cultures that it was talking about. It mentioned Persia. It mentioned that some of them speak Brazilian Portuguese. So there was a couple different ones mentioned in here. I think they had like an Iranian ancestor. But it's working for her grandpa, really loving the restaurant that she's in. There's a lot of talk about gentrification in both this story and the next one. And really, when I think about it, there's kind of an underlying story about gentrification through most of these short stories, which I think was making a great point. But this particular one talks about a restaurant chain that moves in next door to this place and kind of how that affects them and how they end up making friends with the workers there. And then our last story finally talks about... Is it Lale? Is how you say it? No, Lale was the one before. This one's Lila. Lila is that character that has appeared through, I think, every single one of these stories where she has this Mexican pastry that's like exactly what that person needs at the moment. Again, this one really talks about gentrification as well as racism. Our main character is in this apartment, like, handing off a pastry to someone, and this white woman comes out saying, "You don't belong here, and I'm going to call the super if you show up again." So, that's upsetting to see, of course. This one does introduce a trans character, which I really like. And it was an interesting way to introduce it because... introduce the topic, because you have this restaurant and the mom is taking down some of the pictures on the wall, and the wall's just covered with pictures of family members. Kind of makes the visitors to the restaurant feel like they're part of the family, and Lila's just like, "Why are you taking down all these recent photos? Why are they going away?" And her mom says, "Because we have to let people be who they are." And then this person comes in the next day and she's just like, "Who are you?" And apparently she knew them as a kid, but couldn't recognize them as an adult because they'd gone through transition. And then she's thinking about how she feels about them, but she's also very shy and trying to show their feelings for this person without really saying anything. And that really spoke to me as a shy person. I don't think I'm as shy as I used to be, or maybe not that I'm not as shy, but I really go out of my way to try and say hi and get to know people. Would that be an introverted extrovert or an extroverted introvert? I think I'm an extroverted introvert. I don't know. And then finally we just have an about the authors. So there's this paragraph written for each author that's written for the book. I did look up each author because I have a map up on my wall here that shows, I put like a pin in each country that I've read from for the year, just to kind of keep track and make sure that I'm diversifying the countries that I read from. But most of these authors are Canadian, Mexican, and Indian. We have Rebecca Rowanhorse, who is Native, and then there's like 1 or 2 authors that are American born. But I really enjoyed this. I've never read anything like Hungry Hearts before, where it's a short story series, but it's all happening in the same place. We've got a couple of revolving characters. Several characters from the other stories show up in the last one with Lila, because she's like, I visited such and such a person to give them such and such a pastry. So it was really awesome to see that kind of circle back. But I liked this. There were a couple stories that didn't quite feel like they fit in, but I still really enjoyed it. I want to recreate this map at the front of the book. Add in some colors, add in some pieces from the stories in here to let you know kind of like where certain stories took place. I think it would be really cute to hang on the wall of my library. So I'll see if I can make that up one of these days when I have time. But that is going to be it from me. I hope you enjoyed this reading vlog and seeing the stuff that I have been cooking in the last month and a half, I think it's been. And yeah, please pick up this book. I really liked it. I think a lot of you would enjoy it. Thank you to Victoria from What Victoria Read for recommending the book. Please like, subscribe, be my friend on social media, and I will see all of you in my next video. Bye, friends.